Jeff, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Phil. Another one comes to an end. Another season comes to an end.
I know, man. It's pushing up toward the middle of October now. We just finished up our second 2-day trip. For a lot of people who don't know, I was in China for 3 years, so I'm just back and getting things rolling with Philip and Patrick, and you've been already a big part of that. Thank you for that.
Glad to be a part of it.
So our last trip was fantastic. I mean, we still hear a lot about it. You know, we did 2 videos, and people love those videos. This trip was different, but
maybe we set the bar too high.
I don't think so, because everybody on board down there, I just walked through there, and they're all saying thanks, had a great trip. It was another great trip, and the thing that we'll talk about a lot of different stuff so people can get caught up, but what I like is you're not afraid to run far, you're not afraid to burn fuel, you're not afraid to work hard, and we did it again this trip.
Yeah, no, I've never really put fuel on my agenda as, you know, a deciding factor of where we will and won't go. I mean, fishing as of lately, I would say the last few weeks has been a little, you know, scratchy. We've had to kind of piece our trips together, and it, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you put it all together, it makes for a nice trip. I mean, obviously that first trip was exceptional, but this Bluefin this year has been all over the map. It's really hard to track and even harder to get on their schedule.
Right.
It bites in the day, it bites at night, it disappears, it shows up over there. So, you know, I guess that's pretty typical of bluefin tuna fishing, but it's been certainly hard to track this year and hard to predict. So
certainly been more inconsistent here recently, and today on our second day, we'll get to our first day in a second, but we're fishing with the San Diego fleet, so that tells you they're not coming out of Point Loma and hanging the left and going down the Baja coast. They're popping up here.
And it's the new norm, you know. We're used to seeing those guys. That fishing's been up here quite a bit the last few years.
Yeah.
Especially seems like the bigger fish have been above the border of the bluefin. You know, you get some of that smaller yellowfin down there. A lot of guys rather catch the quality, you know. But nothing's been easy lately to come by. So, but yeah, no, we see those guys all the time. Fishing next to them is nothing new to us here in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I know. So what I'd like to do is focus on our trip. We'll talk about that, and then just talk generally about what kind is going on. We'll talk a little bit about Santa Bárbara Island and Tanner and Cortez and Clemente and all that. But first of all, we went out to Cortez, and of course Patrick and Philip and we all want to get a yo-yo iron yellow. And I was managed to do that. In fact, I threw it on up there in the bow with you watching. That was a lot of fun.
You had a flashback of the old Redondo days.
Did, man. Bouncing yellows. So that was fun. Patrick got one, and Philip wrestled one away from a sea line. I don't know if you were watching that, but he wrestled one away for Caesar, who's a guy who was on there, and Caesar got to take that fish home, so that was awesome. So what can you tell us, looking at our day out there and in general about Cortez? What's going on out there?
Well, you know, we had I wouldn't call it obviously as good a yellowtail fishing as we had on our last trip. You know, every day is different. Actually, we're on a different part of the bank than we were last time. We picked.
Yep.
Our casualty rate was high. We were fishing a little bit shallower than we normally would fish at. Those fish seem to be up in the shallow, and you saw our casualty rate. I would say we landed 1 out of every probably 5 or so we hooked.
Definitely.
The way I kind of see that in an overview, you guys had opportunity. You know, you have opportunity to catch. We wouldn't say go so far as say we capitalized on it, but we got some fish on the boat, picked away at the better grade yellows, caught some bonita, kind of petered out, and then you know, we moved off the bank, continue on with our day. A little bit of bottom fish.
Yeah, that was nice too. That bottom fishing was great. Everybody's going home with some fillets. My question to you is, if someone's listening and they're saying, okay, wait a second, if I get out there on Cortez in that shallow water and I want to capitalize on my chances of getting one of those yellows, what do I need to do? And I'm going to say fish heavy tackle. You're going to say what?
Yes, but also I have a theory, and it sounds silly, but it's true. People fight fish not to lose fish, not to land them. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's very true. Like, you see people hook fish, they're so worried about losing it, they're fighting it not to lose it versus pulling on it. I would rather see a guy pull a hook on a fish than let him take him in the rock. But, you know, that comes with experience or coaching or whatever. But you know, especially when you're fishing over structure, you can't be afraid to pull.
Right.
You got to turn that fish's head. If you got to get his head coming towards the boat. If you don't, and they get their head down on you, then they have leverage on you. Then they can use their tail, and they're going to take you down in the structure. Those fish know where they're going. So you got to hook them. You got to have a rod with a little bit of backbone. Most importantly,
Yes.
I think more above line test size, because there's always going to be that. Can I get bit on 40?
Yes.
No, but I can get bit on 30, or whatever the scenario is.
right.
Like yesterday, I think Matt had a couple bites on 30. He switched to 40, and he couldn't. I think it was like 1 or 2 for 5.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I think you need a rod with some backbone. And when you hook those fish, they're going to take their initial run, and you got to turn that fish. You got to lay back on that rod, and you really got to pull.
Yeah.
You got to pull like you're trying to horse the fish to the boat.
Like you freaking
And if you
mean
break
it,
it
right?
off, well, then you break it off. But I just see a lot of guys, they really baby their fish.
Yeah.
And there's certain places where you just can't afford to do that.
Yeah,
and that happens to be one of them.
I can remember being a kid on the Redondo Special, a guy named Joe Schilling. You might have known him, or Joe. You know, he was running the boat, and he saw me not pulling hard, and I said, "Well, it's only 25, Joe." And he said, "Tie that frickin' 25 to that cleat right now and pull on it." And you gotta frickin' pull hard.
You gotta get their head turned.
Yeah.
And at least get them away from the structure. It makes a big difference. It's just I see a lot of things. There's a lot of things I see people getting in the habit of. One pet peeve of mine is like, you'll see guys hook fish and they instantly go into panic mode, and you see the drags just get hammered.
Yeah.
And we lose fish like that. It's like, ask a crew member, check your drag, set it. You know, we got rings back there. You can pull on them. You can check your drag. You can have a crew member do it. That way, when you hook your fish, you're pretty much good to go. It's you and the fish. But I see that a lot, where a guy will hook a fish and then they just instantly, like, it starts taking drag. They go, and
Right.
they start tightening the drag, and you lose your fish.
Yeah, and you make such an important point. Don't be ashamed or afraid to go to a crew member, right?
We're all here to help.
Yeah.
We want to see you catch fish. That's what we do. This is a strange thing we do, but guys will talk about these trips 5 years down the road. Oh, I remember that day I was on, the Freedom, or I was on the Amigo, or the so-and-so. Like, people remember things that you do and the trips that they have with you. So, we want to see it be obviously as successful as possible.
It's such an amazing thing that you say that, because, of all the shit that I've done in my life, including living all over the world and everything, sometimes it comes back to a fishing trip that I was talking to Mike Aker.
You just told me what Joe Schilling told you, and
right.
When were you born? 1934? Okay. But you remembered that.
Exactly. I can remember that. I can remember Dipley doing a lot of stuff. I can remember a lot of stuff. Mike Aker, who's on here today, I can remember all kinds of stuff with him. So you're so right about that. It makes such a big difference. So Cortez Bank, we had some pretty nice yellows out there. Casualty rate was extremely high. We know how to combat that now. Caught some beautiful reds out there. And then our second day, well, that night we spent in the Cove. That's always a lovely evening. I'm sure it is for you guys, right?
It's our personal water bit.
We had a really good night's sleep, and as usual, well before sunrise, you're putting out, and we're going looking for kelps, and that's what we did today.
We went kelping today. There's been some kelps, sliding up the inside across the border there. I think our big hope today was to find one that was loaded with Dorado.
Yeah.
One guy did. One of the boats did today. Had a kelp for 75. That's kind of the one we were looking for.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some smaller grade yellow on the kelp, and we got a few Dorado, but we didn't find the one specifically that we were hoping for. But anyways, in any event, the last few days, a couple of the guys in our group been fishing down there, and there's been some yellowtail and Dorado sliding up on the kelps. And, so we caught plenty of that today. We just didn't really get the one we wanted, but that was day 2 game plan.
Yeah, and it was, for lack of a better way to describe it, it was pretty action-packed. Everybody on this rig had a good time.
Plenty of fish to be caught, no doubt, yeah. So, and then you can always find that one that maybe has a few tuna on it. There has been a few of those that have crossed the border as well that, we had one a week and a half ago or so. We had, 80 yellowfin on it. So there's a few of those. It's getting lucky and finding the right kelp.
All right, I'm going to ask you to predict the future a little bit now. Is this offshore season dwindling to an end? Is it far from over? What do you think? I mean, there was some bluefin, I guess, found out by Tanner. So
sound like the guys had a little
down
bluefin today. I don't know, Phil. I can't predict.
This water's still pretty damn warm, isn't it?
Water's warm. We fished in 72, 73 degree water today. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There was so much bluefin around this year, like the last few years. You'd think, like, wow, this is really bitchin' set up for the fall. This stuff's going to get on the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to catch some fish in the fall. The last 2 years, some of our best tuna fishing was in November. But there was a lot, in my opinion, there was a lot more yellowfin around the last 2 years than what we've seen this year. I think the seiners were really hungry this year because there's no squid, there's no sardine for them to catch. So I think the U.S. seiners might have had a little bit more impact at the border.
Yeah.
And then whatever the guys are, saying down below, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know. I don't know what's going to. I mean, this stuff could materialize and bite here in the next week or two and slide us into November.
Yeah.
I'm not real stoked with what I see right now.
Yes.
Like I said, there's a little bit of there's bluefin around. Some big ones, some catchables, but it's been so difficult lately. We've had a lot of those days where you're driving around, and then you find an area of fish, and you slide on these big, beautiful breezers and these flat spots, and you just, you dump the bait on them, and it's
they
just
don't want to bite.
Wadded up tight on the meter. It goes right under you and right out the other side, like
so
you're never
frustrating.
there. So it's very frustrating. Yeah. And then there's days where you don't see it, and then all of a sudden it pops up 20 miles above you or below you, and then a day or two later, and maybe somebody will get a hit, or we'll go down there and have a day or two of decent fishing, and then it's almost like every other day you're back to the drawing board.
Right.
Where are we going tomorrow? What are we going to catch today? And it's been very inconsistent in that manner as of lately. And I don't know. I have no idea what tomorrow holds, but I know one thing: the sun will rise, and we'll still be here.
And we'll have endless possibilities. Once again, I guess you're telling most people what you told us was just bring everything from 20 to the heaviest you got, because you don't know from day to day what's going to happen.
And because of on our trips lately, and like Ricky's trip we just got off of on our last 2.5 day, we've been doing instead of this driving around aimlessly. And we did have some bluefin on our last trip. We actually had a good stop before dark. Right. But instead of just solely burning everybody out on this, we've been trying to mix up our last few trips by doing different stuff. We fished a little bit at the island. Let's go try for the bluefin. Maybe we do it at night if there's some flatfall fish. Let's go out to the bank, try and catch some decent grade yellows. Let's do some bottom fishing. Everybody goes home with some beautiful fillets. They have fun for a couple hours, catch some nice quality bottom stuff. A little bit of everything. So yeah, right now on my groups, I've been telling them, bring it all.
And Jeff, I've got to tell you, just from my perspective and talking to our group and talking to Philip, who's getting tired of holding that camera over there, that freaking works. I mean, because we were all commenting, we're like, Mark, one of the best deckhands on the coast. We were all commenting, look at this date today, man. We caught nice yellows on the bank. We got some beautiful reds. So now we're all fished out with the finest eating fish in the sea. And then we get a sundown bite on smaller yellowtail and dorado, all packed into one day. That's
with having a respectable shot at catching a tuna.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So exactly. We're looking for tuna that whole time, and that's a remarkable day. It's really fun.
It's just, I notice with a lot of the groups, any group, you get a few of your more hardcore guys that definitely understand and they're in big game mode. But a lot of your more like we get out once or twice a year groups, we want a shot at a tuna. We all do. I want a shot at a tuna. I love to see putting a smile on a guy's face when he catches a big bluefin. But at the end of the day, you drive a guy around for 8 or 10 hours and he really hasn't had a shot to pull on something. It's nice to stop and fish sometimes. We've been in this bluefin mode for so long now. It's nice to put an anchor down once in a while and let a guy fish.
Totally agree.
Get the glasses out of my eyeballs.
Oh my God, you're burning your eyes out. I can see that. Eddie Leland is a buddy of mine, and the thing that he's hardcore. He wants to catch big fish, but that guy gets as much joy out of catching a frickin' barred perch as he does a 300-pound bluefin or dropping for rockfish. And most of this group, and I know my sons and we're that way. Like, if I had to pick what I liked the most, it was catching those vermilions.
Yeah.
That was so freaking much
Well, and that's
fun.
the thing. If you're
so awesome.
you go out and catch some quality rockfish where you can bounce a jig, catch a big red or a chucklehead or whatever it may be, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. You go home with some good eating stuff, and we try to focus on the quality versus just going and catching a bunch of sack fillers. You know, let's go catch some good stuff. And the guys like it. You know, a lot of groups they like that, and you know, it's fun, and it's one of the pieces of the puzzle that's been putting these trips together here lately. That everybody's going home with, you know, some quality fillets.
I think it's a great strategy. On a personal level, I'm going to get personal now with you because, shit, we've been friends how many years? 20, 25?
Oh, probably longer than that. Well, yeah, at least. Let's call it that.
So, how is it to hold up? I mean, I look at the work ethic of you and your crew day in and day out. These guys have had very little rest. They just finished cleaning fish for hours and hours, got very little sleep. They're scrubbing the boat. They have a great attitude. They're always smiling. They're always energetic. Same with you. How do you do that?
Slave driver.
Well, you too. How do you keep such a great attitude? You've realized
work ethic. I don't know. It comes from within, right? Like as with any operation, and there's some great operators. I'm not going to name all the guys that I respect and think highly of, but there's some really good guys in the industry. Any industry, any job, I think everything's you got to lead from the top. If you have a bad attitude, how do you think everybody underneath you is going to have? Right?
Exactly.
If you, I won't ask a guy to do something that I'm not going to go do myself.
Right.
Or that I haven't done, right? So I think you have to handle all of that in, you know, when you're dealing with crew, firmness and fairness. Like, all these guys know I got their back.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm here to help. I'm doing my best for all of us, you know, to catch fish for you guys, for our passengers. And, you know, we set a standard, like, we want things to be here. You know, mediocrity is to me not acceptable. I want to be at least a cut above, you know, where, and these guys know what needs to be done. They know how I am, and they know what I expect, and we all work really well together. You know, like Mark knows when I need him up here glassing, when I need him to be doing certain things. So I don't know, it has to come from the top.
Yeah, for sure.
If you don't have leadership at the top and you want things to be a certain way, it's not going to be like that underneath you. So I guess that's my answer.
I've been on a lot of boats over the last decades, and I've seen some guys that have their feet on the dash and they're drinking coffee with the jigs in the water, and hey, maybe every freaking time we look up here, you're burning your eyes out with the glasses, and so is Mark, or so is Mark Paisano. You guys are freaking working hard, and that's not easy. It gets tedious, doesn't it?
Remember we were just talking about things that people told you that you always remember? Steve Tanaka told me one time, I swear to God, it's the simplest of sayings, but I'll never forget it. He looked at me one time, he's all, always pay attention. Pay attention, right? Because there are guys like that. I've had a guy work for me who's has his feet up and the radio's going, and you know, you never know what one little subtle thing you might miss, and that might be your whole day, or perhaps your whole trip. So it's like, it's those little things. I always remember that, like, pay attention.
It's so, and that's a life lesson. It's not only in this business, but whatever you're doing, right? Pay attention.
Yes. When anything you're going to do, don't half-ass it, you know?
Exactly. Santa Bárbara, well, let's just jump around a little bit. Santa Bárbara Island, what's going on there?
There's been some decent yellowtail fish at that island as of lately.
Big grade?
I don't think it bit here today. Well, I don't know if anybody was up there today. It didn't bite as well yesterday, but that island's treated us really well the past 2 years, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very small island for anybody who hasn't fished there. There's not a whole lot to it. It's very fickle.
Yes.
It's very condition oriented. And usually you know how your day is going to go by about 7:30 in the morning. And we've had some phenomenal days there over the years of sea bass and yellowtail fishing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's one island that's been heavily impacted with all this closure nonsense. Between the rockfish depth restrictions and the segment closures that they've taken from that island didn't have a whole lot to spare.
Yeah.
And it gave up a lot.
That's true.
So that being said, we still have had some great fishing there, especially the last 2 years. It's been a great spot, destination for us for yellowtail. It bit last year for about a month straight, which is highly unusual for that place. Historically, you get 3, maybe 4 days of a bite window, and then typically it's over, or you lose the conditions or something, or they'll get too much boat pressure on it. But last year it was very, very consistent for us yellowtail fishing, even bass fishing.
Yeah.
This year, I wouldn't consider it this year as good as last year, but the guys on the Freedom have had some great fishing up there. I have really only been there 1 or 2 times this year with this boat, but that's only because we've been offshore. But other than that, I mean, it's still a great place to go.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
There's some good fishing to be had there at times.
You mentioned bass. I just want to ask you, Bill caught a calico bass on Cortez Bank. Does that happen very often? Do you see it often, or was that an unusual thing?
No, we catch them out there, and we don't go out there and anchor up and
Try to catch calico.
200 calico bass.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that would be like unheard of, but there's bass up in the shallows
Okay.
there. I have caught them there.
Clemente, Catalina, are those islands looking like they might be in the next couple of weeks in that scenario, or not?
It sounds like the 3/4 day guys are catching some of this smaller grade yellow at Catalina. I think a lot of that stuff moved off the Kelps.
Yeah.
They've had relatively decent fishing for the local boats at Catalina this year. I haven't fished there once this year. I just haven't. I don't. We just don't. I don't know. I mean, if there was sea bass or something to be had, we probably would. But largely I just kind of. I don't know.
Stay away.
I stay away. I leave it for the 3/4 day guys. I mean, we have in the past fished Catalina plenty. I like fishing Catalina. It's just we have not had the need.
Clemente? How about that? The island
Clemente,
itself. Fishing not offshore, but at the island.
you want a
Anything going on
synopsis
there?
for the year
Yeah.
or for now?
For now. What's
For now,
happening
we
now?
haven't really fished it, so I couldn't tell you. Overall, for the year, not bad.
Yeah.
We had some good spring yellowtail fishing. We had some great fish on the breezers this year, early up the back. Bass fishing for us was pretty exceptional up on the west end of the island. We had some really good bass fishing days this year.
Good.
So yeah, but right now I just think everybody's concentrated so much on
Offshore.
pelagics and
Yeah.
stuff that nothing's really been given too much of a good look.
All right, and finally, are you going to tie the boat up at any point in time and do maintenance, or are you running straight through? What's what's going on with the Amigo in the coming months?
Well, we're pretty chartered here for the rest of October. We have a few open party dates left, but after October, I don't know.
Okay.
We have a handful of charters for November. I have a few rock cod trips in December before the holidays, but I would say if we get a reboot on this offshore fishing, we will probably run into November.
Okay,
If
cool.
we don't, we'll probably run a little bit in November. And then as far as maintenance goes this year, obviously, as you know, we just bought the boat. The boat needed some of our attention, and it got probably more than we had to spare.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen most of our equipment we keep pretty darn nice.
Absolutely.
And this boat still needs some work. Like eventually we'd like to redo the whole galley and make everything status quo. But whether or not we have the means or the time to do that this year remains to be seen. So I think we're going to keep it pretty simple this year. And with this whole COVID thing, and it pinched off a good chunk of our season and everything, I learned we're probably going to be a little more cautious this year financially. So we're going to do some projects. I have some outfitting to do to the boat, I think, to get it a little bit more suited for some of this big fish fishing. And other than that, I think we're going to spit shine everything and go fishing again in the spring.
Awesome. Well, it's always good to see you, my friend. We had such a good time. This was a special trip. My brother's here from Taiwan. We fished commercially out there on Tanner and Cortez for several seasons together, so we got to renew that. And then fishing with the boys, they brought their cousin Garrett along with them. And then tonight, Connie, who's studying to be a doctor, my brother's daughter and his wife are going to meet us. So it's a big family reunion, and it's a reunion among good friends.
Yeah. Great
I
having you,
consider
Phil.
you like right up at the top of the list,
I
Jack.
appreciate that. You as well. And hopefully we continue to do this in the coming years. I know we talked about you guys getting some dates for next year, maybe a spring island trip where we have a little bit more island fishing, and then maybe we do this again in the late summer and the fall.
Well, before we walked up here to do this interview, Philip said, I think I need to walk into the office and talk to Aaliyah about booking those dates right now tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
Do that.
So anybody who's interested in this boat for next year, we are taking dates, and she's putting trips in for next year, and I think we got a little traction this year, get things going. So we look forward to it.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right, Phil.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take care, man.